Hello and welcome to, I think, the 7th time learning together. And we are still working our way through the multiple introductions of the Rambam, which I've said to you are not really introductions in a certain sense they are, but they're laying the foundations of everything that will come in this amazing journey through the guide for the Perplexed, the Moreh Nevuchim. So we're now to the third introduction. The third and the fourth are much shorter than the second. And the third one is not really, it's called Savas Mamazeh. It's the instructions of how to read this work. So this one, really the second time you learn through is like, oh yes, I get it now. But you got to remember this one. If you want to really grasp everything that's in here so that nothing escapes you, compare chapters to one to the other, right? Your goal in any one chapter should not be to understand that chapter alone, but also to understand each word that occurs as what appears to be, which will often happen, something he seems to slide into as, oh, I got into this side. Even as I say, and it's not the goal of this chapter. Even if it's not the goal of the chapter. So he's told you now black on white. And hopefully, Be'ez Hashem, when we go through it, I'll show you where these some of these occur. Because everything is not just been random, but with real deep precision. So even though I told you in the Mishnah Torah, when you read his halachic work, you see exactly the precision, really the guide is the same. The Rambam is telling you, although it will not appear that way, it will appear higgledy-piggledy and all over to this topic and then this topic and then, oh, back to this topic. Oh, yeah, let's go back to this topic. That's not correct. That's just how it appears because we're not ready to grasp it, because he's got to flash the lights. As he said in the earlier section, he's got to let us see the sparks. He's got to let us let the lightning flash. But actually, it's very, very precise. And we know the Rambam is, when the Rambam says something precise, what it means. Mishnah Diuk, Vizhiros, Magrimas Tos, Bavonos Dova Kosha. And also very, very lot of work to make sure that there won't be, we won't fail to explain something difficult that needs to be explained. There's actually nothing that is out of place. Unless it's needed to explain something in place. So when he tells you explicitly, this is not here, it means, yes, it's not the goal of this chapter as far as this chapter goes, but you needed to know that point right here, right now. Do not, therefore, just look into it kind of, oh yeah, kind of got the basic point. Now, I have to warn you already, I'm thinking when we get certain chapters, we are going to go relatively quickly through them, maybe even go through quite a few of them outside. I'm just thinking how much time it's going to take us to go through in 20-minute slots to get through the whole guide. But when I'll try and point out if he does do these digression points. And also another thing to notice is often when he's bringing proofs or something, he'll bring a number of psukim, a number of verses. And quite often they will relate back to similar verses brought in previous chapters or later chapters that together cover a whole episode in Torah that's important to get through. So I'll try and point those things out as well. But it's definitely worth you spending time beyond our Chabura together, going through the chapter, just carefully revising what we said and noticing things like this. Also, it's worth when you're quite a distance in, going back over and learning again. Again, all depends how much time people have, but then you really, really get the Rambam telling us how you're going to get out your best from all of this. If you just do it quickly, you're going to actually damage me. Val toil, that's machana, won't be good for you. Rather, you should learn everything that ought to be learned, and constantly go over it. And that will cover most things, most things you'll find difficult in the Torah, that are going to be difficult for the enlightened. And remember, the enlightened, he's already given us the criteria of what that means. I make a shavua, as the Rambam says, he's making a shavua with Hashem, and maybe exalted, as kol mishayik kara mamari zeh, that anybody who reads this, shalay yefarish by af milachas, do not comment on a single word, and don't clarify it to anybody else. Ela mashum mefurish b'dvarin is explicit. Misha kadmeni mechachmei Torah for somim. Unless you can find something in it that explicitly along the lines of what earlier Chachamim of the Torah have said. Don't, if you find something you think is not in the words of the Chachamim before, then don't teach that, don't clarify that to anybody else. Nor should you try too quickly to respond to me. It will be possible sometimes that you might think I mean one thing when I actually mean the opposite. So you're going to bring some disproof of me or some argument against me. Well, that's not what I meant. And you damage, you cause harm where I was trying to help. And you're paying bad instead of good. By the way, this is, again, we'll try and look at some examples that he may have been intending as we go through, although this obviously opens up to lots of possible interpretations. Is he saying that you won't find such things, or you might find such things but don't teach them too publicly, or what is he saying exactly over here? Either way, the simple point is that it's very, very easy to misunderstand the Rambam because he's writing in this obscure style, and he is not trying to be inconsistent with previous generations. And he's spoken called Misha Voy Liadoi. Rather, a person should really think as much as you can. If it sort of satisfies our thirst, even just in one point, through which anything you've been finding difficult, and because of learning the Sefer, one thing is made easier and satisfies your thirst for knowledge. Yoidan Hashem, give thanks to Hashem, and be content with what you've understood. Don't try and overread into things that you might not understand. If you find nothing at all of any benefit at all, then just treat it like it wasn't written. Just leave it. If you think there's something wrong with it in your thinking, try to understand it by judging me favorably, says the Rambam. Even if you have to sometimes use a far out interpretation, that we even say about the average person, right? You see an average fellow doing something that looks wrong, you interpret it in the positive, even if it's far out. But how much more so when you deal with Chachmei Torah, wise people teaching Torah, who are telling you this is a very hard thing to teach and to navigate precisely, right? Who are doing their best to teach us truth and reality, and especially the way it's described, where it's not possible to do it in the simplest, most natural way. And I know that many beginners who do not really understand any deep thought, they may get some benefit out of some of the chapters, but the person getting the most out of this is the person I described above, somebody who's really got very strong faith, strong emunah, but also has learning outside that makes it seem like there's contradictions and problems. We asked this whole block of you should be able to benefit from every single chapter. It should be really, really wonderful and really sweet to such a person. But those who are very confused, they're not just torn between two ways. They have complete emunah in the Torah, but they've also learned other stuff. But they've now got completely lost into false ways of thinking. And these guys who think they're great thinkers, but don't really have any knowledge of true knowledge. There'll be going to be a lot of things in here that they're going to find really, really hard. They won't understand what they're doing. And more than that, seem to them as false things. Right? Because of their own falsehood, they're going to be really, really struggle with this work over here. Now, who exactly he's referring to here? Not so clear, but it's very possible he means the Mutakalimon, as we're going to see later on, and perhaps others who've got so deep into Aristotelian thought as well. Not so clear, but either Creator of the universe knows Shani Lechadalti Lira Harbe Ma'oid Milichtov Esadvam Sharatzisi Lichtov Mamazeh. Right? That I've never stopped being really, really careful about every single thing that needs to be in this Sefer. Why? These are such deep matters. Nobody's done this that I'm aware of, says the Rambam, in our exile, since we've been in exile. In other words, the Nevi'im did it, the prophets did it. There might have been other works which we lost. I spent so much work, says the Rambam, because I'm doing something which hasn't really been done before. Trying to teach the pathway to the way of God whilst concealing from those who could get it wrong, and not teaching people in an unhealthy way, but giving them the little sparks and so they can refine themselves and go deeper. Hashem only knows just how much work I've done. Right? How can I even do this? How can I even start writing a book like this when no one else has done it? What gave me the ability then to do it with all this fear and trepidation of doing something that's never been done before? There were two foundations. Etc. The pasuk in Tehillim that says, which we read in two ways. It's a time of doing for God because they are undoing your Torah, and as we're losing Torah, we're losing its depth, and also we're having people who are knowledgeable in the sciences getting completely mixed up and confused. And then you can do things with Dorish Chazal, Dorish on this. When it's Eislas Hashem, you can undo the normal way of normal operation within the teaching of Torah and do it differently. But Hashem is in the second Amr Kol Ma'asecha Yirashem Shamayim. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, whatever you do, do for the sake of heaven. And the Rambam was saying, I was thinking, what does Hashem want? What does Hashem want? What does Hashem want? And the answer was, he wants me to do this. These two Nishanti I leaned, Masha Kasabti, Mixas Perek Ma'amazeh, many things that occur, or some things that occur in this work. This is just so powerful when the Rambam writes this. It's just like, it puts you in the mindset of, this is awesome things that Rambam himself is not sure whether he should even have written this sefer. But this is why he did it. And by the way, that's why I wrote earlier, you may find things you think are mistaken. Please judge me favorably. I'm really trying to do this the right way. Okay. But I'm the one who when I was pressed, I find no other way to teach the truth other than a way that will maybe give one person who's the right type of student, the right, and thousands of 10,000s of fools could get wrong. I'm going to say what that one person needs to hear, even if the masses will then misunderstand and mock and so on. But I want to liberate that one person who was stuck because of the right journey and right intellectual journey, but that got him stuck, and I want to help him and get him out of his confusion until he reaches true shleimus, true pathway. So there's so much going on here, but let's just sum up. The main point is every single thing is going to be exactly where it needs to be. And you have to think very carefully, compare chapter to chapter, compare things in chapters to things in chapters, because the Rambam has worked so hard on literally the order of this, even though it won't seem that way. And yes, he had tremendous trepidation writing it down, but ultimately it's worth it for those who cannot take the Torah in its simple, naive way because of the sophistication in other areas. And it's worth just straightening one of them out, even though it may confuse lots of other people, or lots of people may criticize it, or whatever it'll be, because they won't understand what he's doing, because he can't write the way he'd like to write, but he's got to write in the only way he can teach, which is things he said earlier, by revealing the flash of lightning, letting you've got to do a lot of work reading this book. And just reading this is like, oh wow, I'm just so excited to get inside it and start to do the actual work. We're going to stop here.
I've got a question.
Go on, yeah.
You don't have to read it, we won't come out the microphone, but it seems to outline this spectrum of perplexedness, going from ignorant to perplexed to astray. First of all, he didn't fully describe what he means by the astray version.
Yeah.
The question I've got is, how do you know where you feel astray?
Yes, it's a great question. So the question is, well, there's really more than one. One question is, he's outlined several different categories: people who are fools, people who are confused, and people who are completely astray. Now, he never defined fully the people who are completely astray. The fools are people who have not developed a basic sophistication enough to be bothered by things in the Torah, and therefore could get very bothered by him answering questions that they don't have. And some of the answers they'll come up with. And also, they may not understand why chapters have to be where they are and points he's making on the side, and can easily get stuck and lost. Then there's people who are not like that, but might nevertheless misinterpret him. Right now, I think, as we'll go through, we'll see, for example, there are times when G'dolei saw many of the great Rishonim attack the Rambam for certain things. And when we look carefully, we can see a potential defense of the Rambam. And that may be this other category of people who are not necessarily wrongly, but can misunderstand him and ask questions. There is also a category of people who are the genuinely confused, that the Rambam was already defined for us. The people who know some basic secular knowledge and have matured a certain way of thinking, which today may include a lot more people than even have studied at great depth secular knowledge. We've absorbed certain ways of thinking from the world around us and are not happy by certain phrases in the Torah or imagery that they want. They've got emunah in, they've got faith, and they know it's true, it's from Hashem, but doesn't seem to make sense. They can't reconcile the two. And then you've got another category of people who have been so led astray by the philosophical things, they perhaps don't believe in the truth of Torah. Right? They're so steeped in certain philosophical ways or other ways of thinking that they've completely abandoned perhaps the Torah. Or we're going to see another group where the Rambam, where they're through their sophisticated thinking, they've abandoned all of scientific teaching, which the Rambam thinks is not a great thing either. And those groups, the Rambam says, are more like they're led astray. Right? So that's, I think, hopefully covers those categories. The other question was, how do we know where we are? I think if a person basically thinks that the Torah is the word of Hashem, or at least very likely to be the word of Hashem, but they think that there are things in it that they struggle with understanding, they're probably capable of learning. They're probably in the category the Rambam is saying, and especially if they are going to take this work the way he says it. Don't judge it too quickly. Realize that even if we're going to go quite quickly through some chapters, he has put everything exactly where it needs to be. And because he's put everything exactly where it needs to be, you should understand we may not be understanding him, but don't blame him for our misunderstanding of him. I'll say one final thing. If you feel that, that there's mysterious things in the Rambam where you think the Rambam is saying something he didn't say, but it fits your worldview, you may also find that you might be in this category of over-projecting things into the Rambam, into Maimonides. I just tell you a story of somebody somebody in Oxford University wanted me to read a paper they'd written on Maimonides. I said to him, I'll read your paper, but let me just warn you one thing. Anything, if you've gone and projected onto some mysterious thing that Maimonides didn't say, but you think he's hiding, that happens to be your worldview, then let me just predict that might be in your paper. And he smiled back with an emoji and said, yeah, I think I fit into that category. So, we have to be very careful. Let's work with the Rambam with what he says, but let's listen very, very carefully to precisely what he says, where he says it, how he says it, what he doesn't say, and build the whole thing together. We've got one final bit of the introduction to go through, the fourth introduction. That will have to wait till next time.